Welcome back. It's Mac. Episode 4 of Icebreakers presented by Royal LePage Dynamic Real Estate, 1450 Corden in Winnipeg. Check them out for all your home buying and selling needs. That's royallepage.ca. First of all, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Can't thank all the dads enough for everything that they do for us and shape us into the people that we are, whether it's the early morning drives to the rink, the baseball diamond, whatever sport it may be, or the chats along the way, always being there and most importantly, being a friend. So thanks to all the dads out there who are listening. Make sure to give your dad a big hug and thank him for everything that he does for you, because, it's a big job and there's someone that we've learned from our whole lives. So shout out to all the dads and thanks for everything.
With another PGA Tour event this week, the RBC Heritage played out, and we're going to try something new here today and bring in our resident golf analyst, Jake Heisinger, also the assistant general manager of the Winnipeg Ice and vice president of hockey operations, and huge golf guy. How'd you see the tournament play out?
Well, first off, what a tremendous honor to get the nod to be a part of this. But you know what? These guys are, I think it's crazy. You golf, I golf. A lot of people golf, and you only play once or twice a week, and it's hard to be consistent. These guys had 3 months off, and obviously they're practicing and working on their game, and I'm sure they're playing lots of rounds. But I can't speak for them, but I'm assuming it's not the same when you get into a competition as opposed to playing a practice round. So these guys go out and fire off these crazy numbers. Look at Fratelli, fired a 62 today, 9 under 62. That is, what are you going to say about that? That's just insane. So it's great to see golf back, and certainly for me being a big golf fan, I thought that the last 2 weeks been tight, a lot of good golfers in the field, and it's been right down to the wire both weeks. So I'm like everybody else that likes watching golf, pumped to see it back.
So let's talk about the winning score here for a sec. 22 under par after 4 days, and you think about the pressure that these guys are under to make putts. When you and I are on the golf course, anything inside 2 feet, just take it. These guys are putting it out. So you think of 22 under par in a PGA golf tournament, and then you think of what we do out there. It's fantastic what they're doing.
Well, it's funny. Last week we were playing, and I remember I gonna give myself a gimme of about 3 feet, and one of the guys I was playing with said, "Well, you must have missed Morikawa lip out there when the pressure was on, and from probably the same distance." And once he told me that, I put the ball back down and ended up putting and closed my eyes, and I think it found the bottom of the cup. But yeah, it's crazy. There's so much pressure every putt, and these guys they're good. It's impressive. I think for me, being a golf fan and obviously throughout the summer, like to play as much as I can. I think the most impressive part is just how these guys come out every week, and you're not going to shoot these crazy scores every week, but these guys are always playing unreal golf. And Daniel Berger coming out of nowhere here, playing, I'm assuming, the best golf of his life. I never really followed him as closely as I followed other guys, but winner last week. I think he was third this week, top 5 for sure. So there's a guy that obviously got better through the last couple months, and he's been coming out firing.
I know you weren't watching there. You're a little busy on Sunday, but Berger on 17th, par 3, hit his tee shot right, and it was off the green. And at that point, he was 2 back of the lead and needed to birdie 17, and obviously needed to birdie 18, but chipped in for birdie on 17 from like 25 feet away, just ice in his veins.
Yeah, I know. I missed that. I was doing a little bit of coaching, but Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the guys are every shot they make looks so easy, and for the average golfer like myself, we know how hard those shots are, and I'm just happy if I put it on the green. I mean, these guys are taking runs at the hole, and you know whether it goes in or not, it's close. So yeah, these guys are it's impressive. So I mean, I think the rest of the golf season, it'll be interesting to see what guys are consistently at the top. I mean, you saw this week, Koepka was back in the mix, DJ was back in the mix, JT, he's always in the mix, and then the biggest wild card for me is Spieth. Like he seems to always be at the top early on, and for whatever reason he has a bad hole, and what was his scorecard the first day? Wasn't it like a triple with like 7 birdies or something?
7 or 8 birdies.
Yeah, like I mean, it's just crazy. So I think he's such a good golfer that, I mean, you even look at a guy like that who's one of the best golfers in the world, and sure makes you feel a little bit better when you throw a triple on your own scorecard.
Just got to say, Webb Simpson won the tournament there this week with 22 under, father of 5 on Father's Day. So pretty special for him. But as we look forward to next weekend's tournament, and the 4 best players, 4 top-ranked players in the world are playing, what are you looking forward to most about that?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think the crazy thing about golf is that, as much you talk about the top 4 ranked players in the world, who's that right now? Rory,
DJ, JT,
and Webb has to be up there.
Webb's number 1 in FedEx Cup now,
Okay.
after today's win. But
yeah. So those are always the big names, but I think you see like every week now that there's different guys challenging that maybe aren't the household names, but these guys are just so good that as much as those are the big names, and rightly so, anybody can literally win, which I mean makes it every week just you have no idea what's going to happen. And Justin Rose, one of my favorites. I mean, you talk about a guy that's always in the hunt. Like every week he's always there, and there's a number of guys that are like that, but you now see that there's different guys, and these young kids that are coming up in the ranks here, Morikawa, Hovland. I mean, these guys are right out of school, coming right to the PGA Tour and winning tournaments. Like it's just insane. So I mean, Morikawa could have easily won last week. So I think as a fan, the golf fan, and just enjoying, I just like watching them play. I'm just interested to see, is it one of the household names that wins the tournament, or is it one of these guys that just consistently playing good golf, or even one of the young guys? I mean, these guys are right there, but I think it'll be interesting. It's sure shaping up to be a pretty good season of golf for the PGA Tour.
Sir Nick Faldo said it the best. He said these kids come out of school and they're ready to win, and they're eager to win. Well, thanks for joining us here today, Jake, and we look forward to your take on the tournament next week.
More COVID-19 news kind of shot through the MLB, NHL, and NFL this week, and with some players testing positive and training facilities closing down for a few days to be cleaned, and new protocols being put into place as these leagues move forward with their return to play protocols. And it was bound to happen that places were going to have players test positive, and it's, how they move forward with that. And of course, we're wishing these guys a speedy recovery, all the best. And, hopefully they get healthy soon and can move forward with the return to play. But for now, just thinking of them and hoping for the best for them. And I'm sure they're all doing the right things. The UFC had another fight night this week on TSN and ESPN. And in the prelims, a Canadian got his first win by knockout in the second round. So that was exciting to see, and he was fired up. So congrats to him, and a good showing as he starts his UFC career. Tough start last year in his career, but he finally got that first win. So he was really fired up and real excited for him. And then of course Bruce Buffer was back. And if you listened last week, you know that I'm a big Bruce Buffer fan, and it was electric to see him back in the ring introducing everybody. And it was funny in the heavyweight bout, he was introducing the two fighters, and they had that camera on one of the fighters when Bruce was introducing him, and the guy started laughing. He had a smile on his face. So it was good to see that, it was firing him up, and the electricity coming from Bruce Buffer was, it's contagious. It really is. So the heavyweight fight was 25 minutes. It went the distance, and those guys can eat punches and kicks and knees, and they don't flinch. It's literally amazing. They take a full right hand to the face and nothing, no emotion. They just keep going. And, the respect they show each other after the fight, when that final bell goes, they, they hug it out, and they respect each other after they just tried to beat the hell out of each other for 25 minutes. And then they do that and hug each other, and, they show all the respect in the world. And I guess for them, it's their hockey game or their football game, and they play between the whistles. And then when it's over, you acknowledge the other guy and what they did and all the effort that went into it. So, as much as it seems like a crazy sport at the start, but when you really, look into it, these guys are trying to make a living, and what they're good at is fighting, and they put a ton of time into their profession, and they put it on display for the world to see. Like, there's no hiding when you're in the ring. So props to them. Like, it's a crazy sport and something that I don't think I could ever do, but for them to get in there and one-on-one and no hiding, literally no hiding, and then to show all the respect at the end is great to see. And the guy who won the heavyweight fight, in his interview after, he was so exhausted he almost fell over and passed out. So that's just how much they put in it. They train for 4 or 5 months on end for 25 minutes, and they leave it all out there. And then the Belmont, the first horse race of the Triple Crown was ran this weekend on Saturday, and Tiz the Law was the heavy favorite going in. And now I see why Tiz the Law was the heavy favorite going in. He sat back for the whole race until the final stretch and turned it on and ended up winning by 4 lengths. And to me, I don't know what goes into horse racing and the training of a horse and how to ride the horse and control the horse, but that jockey definitely knew something, as he just sat back the whole race until it was time to turn it on and then just ran away with it. It was really cool. And, they say that horse racing is the best minute and a half in sports. And it was a great minute and a half, all the whole day build up. And of course it was different with no fans being there, and the celebrities that are always at the horse races and all the personalities that go there. This time it was just about the horses and their trainers and their managers. And the race was great. And there's races before, but the big race was great. And Tiz the Law ran away with it. Check us out on social media at Icebreaker Show with 2 W's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Icebreaker Show on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Really appreciate the follows, the downloads, the subscriptions, and the ratings. We have a great guest on the show today, the host of Hockey Night in Canada's After Hours and the second game on CBC every Saturday night. I know for me, I grew up watching Scott Oake on TV and looking forward to who he was going to have as an interview after the game. So let's get right into that. All right, we're pleased to be joined by Scott Oake from Hockey Night in Canada's After Hours this afternoon. How's it going, Scott?
It's going well. How about you, Mac?
Yeah, it's going all right. Just getting used to the work from home. How's the quarantine and all the the hockey being paused worked for you?
Well, it's a completely different feeling, because normally at this time of year I'd just be finishing up usually the deciding game of the Stanley Cup final, and look forward to having the rest of the summer and September and most of September off. So everything is, I guess, out of kilter is the best way to put it, because the season was paused in March, April, May. Now we're into June, and waiting to see if the NHL can actually start playing in August. It's bizarre when you think about it. If anyone had ever said to you a year ago, this might be how it plays out. You wouldn't have believed it, but these are the times in which we live.
Yeah, no kidding. I was thinking about that the other day, just for, it's not only the players involved, but everybody from the media side and then the management that all, their summers are kind of put on hold here until everything's figured out.
You're right, except that there's a much bigger issue at play, and that's the pandemic, and we need everybody to do what they can to flatten the curve, which we obviously have already done here in Manitoba. We look to be on the right side of the battle right now, but yeah, that's the big issue is people staying healthy. So I hope that if the NHL does begin play in August, that no one's health is affected, and of course they're paying attention to all that, and I don't think they'll play loosely with anybody's health, but there are some risks involved, and we need to be careful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Still exciting stuff if it does happen. I mean, I can't, watching hockey in August and into September here when it's normally just starting to get going. So hopefully, the health and safety can take care of itself and then it gets going. I wanted to ask you about your journey to Hockey Night in Canada. I know you've been with CBC for a long time, but, how did it start and then go from there?
Well, I got my job as a sportscaster completely and totally by accident. I was taking science courses at the university, Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland in the early 70s. And I started fooling around at the university radio station, and we were doing sports and sportscasts and Memorial Beothic, that was the name of the team, hockey games. So someone said to me that I should apply for a summer relief sportscaster job at CBC in St. John's, and I did. I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and so I phoned over, and the gentleman who answered the phone said, as a matter of fact, you're the only person to apply. Can you start on Monday? Thereby proving the only way for me to get a job was if no one else applied. I did that relief job for a couple of years. Full-time job came open. I applied for it. Don't ask me how I got it, but I did. Christmas of 1975, I moved to Winnipeg to replace Don Whitman on local sports. I did that job for about 20 years. While contributing to Hockey Night in Canada and other network shows like Sports Weekend and covering Olympics. And then I went to work full-time for Hockey Night in Canada in the late 90s, I think 1997, and been there ever since. Started doing the pregame show feature called The Headliner, which was sort of an expanded interview mini documentary feature. And after that, took on the show After Hours, which I do now and quite enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I can, just growing up watching Hockey Night in Canada, think back to, watching and After Hours, and now, correct me if I'm wrong, but normally it's a doubleheader on Saturday nights, and you host the second game and then do After Hours after the second game. So I know players have a pregame routine and everything they go through. Like, what does a day look like for you on a Saturday in Hockey Night in Canada?
Well, let's just pick Vancouver because we do a lot of games there. So we get to the rink in the morning for the morning skate at about 10 o'clock. Skate usually starts at 10:30. The second team is on at 11:30, usually done by 12:15 or whatever. So we'd hang around, watch both of those, talk to both teams, get what information that we need, stories that we hope to tell during the game, get information for those, go back to the hotel, have a bit of lunch, basically get changed and go back to the rink at 4 o'clock thereabouts. You'd like to get to the rink about 2.5 to 3 hours before the game, and the game in Vancouver would start at 7 o'clock. Cover the game, goes till 10. After Hours usually would go roughly between 10 and 10:30, and so at 10:30 the day is over, and back to the hotel we go. Sometimes for some post-game refreshments, more often than not. And that's the day. It's a full day, but it's very enjoyable.
No, it's interesting to hear you say that because about a year ago now, I started in the production side of sports. And, when you go as a fan, you show up and everything just happens, and it seems seamless from a fan's point of view, but it's a whole day or two of effort that goes in behind it. And especially when you're watching on TV, it just happens, right? But to you and to people behind the scenes, it's a long day. So that's
the key. You're right. The key to it, Mac, is to make it look like it's easy, right? But in the case of after hours, for example, we would spend a couple of days during the week digging up information, phoning different people for stories, anecdotes, etc., looking for select pieces of video so that when we do that show, we can tell the story of the person who's on it, and better yet, the person who's on the show tells his story. So there's a lot of preparation involved for a program like that, a feature-length interview show, and just doesn't. We'd like to make it look like it just happens, but there is a bit of prep involved for sure.
So I assume that the guests are pre-picked for after hours. And what happens when, say, a team has a tough night and you bring someone on from the losing team? Is it hard to get them to open up, or are they pretty good about it?
We're careful over who we pick. And if we think a team is in tough and stands a good chance of losing, then we would pick from that team more often than not a veteran player who can put it past them faster than a younger player who might take it more to heart. Well, any loss an NHL player would take to heart, but someone who might take it tougher. Generally, the key is to move past the game as fast as possible. We don't dine out on the game on after hours. Sure, a comment on it, but we're more interested in the story of the person we have on there. We want people to leave that show when it's done to say, wow, I never knew that about the guy. Right. So if you can get past the game, especially if it's a tough one, your guest has lost. Sure, it doesn't make it a laugh a minute, that's for sure. But you can generally, with players who've been around for a while, move past a tough game. I remember we had Manny Malhotra when he was playing for the Canucks, and I think they were playing Chicago, and they lost 7-1. And he still came on. And that's another thing. We haven't had a lot of players who said, well, I lost, so I'm not coming on. In fact, I can never remember that happening. So most players honor the commitment, and if it's been a tough night for them, we make it as comfortable as we can and get past the game as soon as we can.
What's if you're looking back, is there one moment that stands out to you? I know when I think of after hours, I think of you and Ryan Reeves together on the screen. Yeah. Always a good laugh, but is there a moment that stands out to you?
Well, any interview with Ryan stands out because it's not like I'm talking to an NHL player. It's like I'm talking to one of my kids. Most people know, I think, that Ryan and his brother Jordan grew up across the street from us and were best friends with their late son, Bruce and Darcy. So it's like he's a member of our family. So there's not even a pretense of any journalistic principles when I'm talking to him, and it leads to all manner of buffoonery. But I hope people give me a pass on that one, and they are kind of entertaining, or so I've heard. So he's been a good guest on After Hours. But the ones that really stand out for me are the interviews with players who have a message. Brian McGrattan's been on the show a couple of times, and I think Brian is approaching 10 years of sobriety now. He's a mentor or a life coach, I guess, for younger Flames players, younger players in the organization. He's making a difference. And when someone comes on with a message like his, lets people know that there is a better way if they're struggling like he was, those are powerful, impactful shows. Kevin Bieksa was also a favorite guest when he would come on, just for the way that he'd torture me or try to torture me, but also because he would speak very seriously about mental health issues because of his relationship with Rick Rippon. Again, powerful shows. So those kind of shows where people have a message and make a difference to people in the audience are special. Those are the ones I remember most of all.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. If we talk about, you do a little bit of interviews between the periods as well. And I got to ask you, because everyone's wondering, do the players get to keep the towels?
Of course they do. That's most often why they do them. The Hockey Night in Canada towel is a prized object for players. I've had players come up to me in the morning and ask if they can be the first intermission interview or the second intermission interview because their father wants the towel. Eric Lindros, I think, ended up with enough towels for a bathrobe. Bo Horvat's heading to bathrobe status now. Every time I interview Bo, his father texts me right after to say thanks for the towel. You can find those towels sometimes on eBay. We only bring 3 to a game. So they go to the intermission interviews and the post-game interview. And they are highly sought after. So we guard them carefully. I like to refer to myself as the keeper of the towel. There's the keeper of the Stanley Cup. I'm the keeper of the towel because oftentimes I'll pick who we're going to interview. So I have great power.
Yeah,
Don't
those
forget
towels, those towels are sought after for sure. No,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
I always laugh when they walk away with the towels, and I know people always talk about, I wonder if they get to keep them. So now we have our answer for that. You mentioned your son Bruce, and you guys are in the midst of constructing the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre in the old site of Vimy Arena. If you just want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, construction's underway. It started in January. The foundation's been poured. The hollow core, which is the floors, are, I think, going in now. Will be completed tomorrow. After that, the walls go up. So the building is coming out of the ground. It's 35,000 square feet. It's going to be a 50-bed long-term recovery center for those seeking recovery. It will have two cornerstones. One is that anyone who is there seeking recovery can stay in the program for as long as it takes to get it right. Could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 3, whatever it takes. And no one will be turned away because they can't afford to pay. So those are very, very important issues in addiction recovery. We're married to the notion of long-term recovery because Bruce had the best year of his addicted life at a long-term facility in Calgary, and he stayed for a year. We believe he had stayed for 2, he would still be alive. It's a project that's near and dear to our heart. We took it on because we wanted to make Bruce's life mean something, make something positive out of such a tragic event, because the worst thing that can happen to a parent is to lose a child. Bruce passed away in March of 2011, so he's been gone for 9 years now, but this building will be a beautiful way to remember him, but yet it'll be a beautiful way to save lives and remember everyone of his generation who lost their life to addiction.
You can't thank you enough for the work you're doing there. And, as a person myself that who hasn't dealt with addiction personally, but been around it and seen, what it can do and the devastating effects, I think it's just great work that you guys are doing. And it didn't just start, overnight. It's been a long project in the making. Now that it's starting to be built, how does that feel?
It's very inspiring, Mac. We had a lot of days where we never lost hope. We always believed we could get this done, but some days were more challenging than others. We had basically a year and a half, 2 years of votes that we had to win at City Hall, 8 in total. A lot of arguments, but we conducted what we thought was a dignified educational campaign, because that's part of it too. It wasn't just about getting the land. It was about the opportunity to educate people and to at least help remove the stigma that so often damns addicts. And we're proud that we were able to reach a lot of people, to get them to think about it and get some of them to change their minds. And we find now that we have a lot of support, and that along the way our message began to sink in, that the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre would be a benefit to the neighborhood and would help save lives. You can't beat that. No,
agreed. Scott, just wanted to, thank you for what you're doing in the community there. That's unbelievable. And thanks for joining our show. We really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure, Mac. And next time you have me on, I'll try to gussy up, maybe shave.
Me too, mate. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks again for listening, and make sure to follow us on social media at Icebreaker Show with 2 W's, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and Icebreaker Show on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll talk to you next week.